So welcome, thanks for having me. My name is Elizabeth Prall. I'm from 596 Acres, so we are New York City's community land access advocacy organization. So basically that means that we help people in neighborhoods get access to vacant city-owned land to start community open space of any kind. So Vacant Lots is where we begin. Everybody knows them pretty well, depending on what part of the city you live in. This is a particularly nice one, but for a lot of people, they look like this in their neighborhood, strewn with trash and inviting crime or just unsightliness and whatnot. And so a couple of years ago, in 2011, when our organization got started, we realized that there wasn't any way to actually tap into vacant land as a resource. When you'd come upon a vacant lot that was city-owned, sometimes you would see a sign like this, depending on which agency owns it or has jurisdiction over that space. So this, when you see this, you can't really understand what it means, besides the fact that it says no dumping and you get a fine if you do dump. So, here's a clearer one that you can actually sort of read. But basically what this sign tells us is that it's this property is under the jurisdiction of Housing Preservation and Development, and that's the sign that they use to identify their properties. Basically, what we did was make a map. So as you can see, there's tons of green dots and some with yellow around them, and all the green dots are pieces of vacant city-owned land. And this actually brings me back to the name of our organization, 596 Acres. When the organization was started, initially we just looked at the parcels in Brooklyn, and there was, when we looked, there was 596 acres, which now that number is like toned down a little bit. We've removed places that aren't like real spaces, maybe that are like really skinny, but it's actually bigger than Prospect Park, which is pretty amazing. So that's where we get the name. But anyway, so the dots with the yellow around them are places where people are organizing, and what that means is that they're actually have connected with us or with other neighbors and are moving forward to try to get access to the space. So it was awesome. We got people online and connecting with vacant land. So it's a really useful tool, and it's something that we use in our work when people call us up and ask, like, I'm looking at this piece of property, how do I know anything about it? We get online and we use the tools ourselves to figure it out. So we started out by putting up signs also to actually get people who live in neighborhoods involved. So when we first started, a very basic handwritten sign: this lot's owned by New York City Housing Preservation and Development. They are nice and will likely let you start a garden here. And so one aspect of the website is you can click on a dot, any dot, and this one is pink, so that means that people already have access to it. And then you can see photos, and you can get to a group's Facebook page if they have access, and if they don't have access, you can see who the lot's owner is, what jurisdiction they're under, basically the size of the lot. It connects to a website called whorepresentsme.org, so you can basically get in touch with your local official. And so a really important thing about the tool is that it's for organizing. So the map at the bottom of a lot's page, you can actually leave notes to other people or just to anybody saying like, hey, I found out some information about this place. Like one of these says, hi, Housing Preservation and Development said there are construction plans for this site, but the woman I spoke to said she did not know specifically what the plans are. So this is a great example of sometimes people talk to a city agency and they get some details about a space, but then they feel kind of they can't move forward with it, so they leave a note. And maybe in 6 months that person comes back into the project. Or if they don't, or if they move away, we can, the staff, we can figure out what's happening there and keep in touch and, remember. But additionally, new people who jump into the project have a record. So like later we have Paula, our director, saying, is this property still owned by the city? Has the construction project been canceled? So it's like we try to engage people and get them to call up the city again and find out what's happening. And then we get a ton of neighbors involved. And so that's what's really great about the organizing tool, but also us working on the ground with people. So I'm the staff organizer, so I work with people all over the city, helping them hold meetings and prepare applications or doing what they need to do to get access, which I'll get into next. Sometimes that means creating like plans for the actual space, so that's always fun. You know, we help connect people with resources also to get access to soil and build raised beds. And then, you know, Vacant Lots turned into a space like this. This is 462 Halsey Community Garden in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, which was actually the first site that we hung signs on and the first garden that actually got access. So it's pretty exciting to actually see it transformed and have people be using it. So we have helped 32 spaces since we started get access. So that's 32 new community hubs and growing more and more. And another thing is that our map has moved. Before it was at 596acres.org, which is our website, but we just moved it like a week or two ago to livinglotsnyc.org. And the reason for that is we are separating our organization from our website in case we don't exist in the near future. We are short on funding and we only have funding till June, so it might happen. But that's far away. June's far away. It's fine. So now we're at livinglotsnyc.org. And some of the cool features that we didn't have before is you can actually search by council district and community boards, which is community district. So before, you can search by ownership. You can like zoom into different areas, but this is actually really exciting that you can look within. So if if we end up talking to a community board that says we want to help someone start a garden in our district, we can like zoom in and see where all the vacant land is. So we now also have parcel outlines, which is very exciting. Instead of dots, we have like little outlines of the shapes. And another thing is we have a Google map view, and this is actually really important because it makes it easy when we open up a page to see what at least the space looked like at the time that Google took a picture. The other thing is Living Lots NYC. We have also helped other cities start tools, or at least create their own. So we have LA Open Acres, which we were hired by an organization in Los Angeles to help them create that. So that's, as you can see, they have a ton of lots. There's also Grounded in Philly, which we partnered with the Garden Justice Legal Initiative to make that happen. So that one doesn't, these names don't connect yet, but then we also have Living Lots NOLA. So, Living Lots NOLA, NYC, it just happens that the names, they wanted to be NOLA, so that works with us anyway. So in some cases we are creating a network, so to speak. So, and then, here's ours, Living Lots NYC. So, back to the organizing. How do I get started? What's the first step? So finding out who the owner is really important, and that's what we do tell you on our website. So we make it pretty easy. And the reason I've highlighted these two is because they're the agencies that have the most land. As I mentioned, housing preservation and development, their job is to create housing, right, on vacant pieces of land. Then there's also the Department of Citywide Administrative Services, and they also have a lot of land. And then these other ones, they have land, but they're just it's not as prominent. We have the MTA, which actually acts as a corporation, and we've actually helped 2 groups get access to MTA land just in the last month. And that was after working with them for 2 years. And it was pretty interesting because MTA, a lot of their property that they own is the roof of a subway tunnel. So they're not going to build anything on it. And it's just going to sit there for forever maybe. So it's pretty neat because they're really open to letting people use it, but they're very risk averse. So you have to go through a lot. You have to get an architect to help you, stamp drawings, you have to have insurance. It's very different than working with a city agency. But it is possible. There's NYCHA land. If you live in public housing, then you can totally get access to the land, and they do have a garden and greening program, which a lot of people don't know about. And there's DOT, DOE. Every route is a little bit different depending on which agency you're working with, but even within that, it gets complicated. So it's really a one-on-one basis. It's really hard to generalize how to get access to land. We know some of the basics, but we have to work with people and just figure it out as we go. So with housing preservation and development, there's this awesome thing called Green Thumb, which some of you probably have heard of. It's a program of the Parks Department that licenses and registers gardens through housing preservation and development. So if you have a piece of land you want to get started, you want to start a garden on, and there's no immediate plans for housing development, then you can apply through Green Thumb, and they will help you create an interim use license with housing preservation and development, usually for 1 or 2 years. So the first thing to do is check in with Green Thumb, and then just let them know you're working on this and you're getting started. It's kind of a do everything at once sort of game. So you want to check in with Green Thumb, but that might take months or a week for them to get back to you. It depends, they're very busy. And then after that, there's all these other things: creating a mission statement, getting letters of support from local organizations. It might be religious groups, schools, block associations. Create a bird's eye view drawing of the space, which is like one of the plan I just showed like a minute ago. Have 2 primary gardeners and 10 members, and helpful to have signatures of neighbors who support the project. Keep in mind, this stuff is all listed on Green Thumb's website, but we phrase it a little bit differently, just in our experience working with people, how it tends to kind of go and what's helpful to know. And you use all of these things to get a letter of support from your community board. And this is really important because it's kind of like a no-go. It's just, you have to have the letter of support. And that sometimes can be a whole nother world, because community boards are their own governing bodies. And it's interesting because they're not tasked with a lot of authority besides liquor licenses and community gardens. So, you go to them and you're like, I want to start one, and they might have their own, everyone might have its own route they want you to take. Some of them want you to go to a committee meeting of land use, and then they want you to go to the parks committee, and then they want you to go to the full board. And that could take like 6 months, if they don't have a quorum at their meeting. They're like, oh, you got to come back. So others, you might go, make friends with them, and they say, done, we'll write you a letter. So it just depends. But these are the basic things that you can do to apply to Green Thumb. And then another agency, the Department of Citywide Administrative Services, the property has to be transferred to another agency for you to get access to it. So you can't apply to Green Thumb for a piece of DCAS land. So the best thing to do is try to get the property transferred to the Parks Department to become a Green Thumb garden. So Green Thumb gardens can happen on housing preservation and development land and on Parks Department land. So DCAS has to be willing to say, okay, we don't want this property. No one's eyeing it for development. It's not of use to us, it's just sitting here. And then Parks has to be willing to say, okay, we'll take it on. And so how you can get Parks to do that is basically organize your neighbors and be ready with all of the things that are needed for a Green Thumb application to kind of advocate for your group. And then Parks will say, oh, this group has it together. If we get the space transferred to us, we're not gonna have to, it's not gonna be a space that's still sitting there, it's a mess. We're gonna be tasked with cleaning up. We've already have neighbors who are invested. We might as well bring it over into our agency. So those are the 2 main routes. So I just wanted to share that with you, give you an idea, because that's most likely what you might encounter. So I did want to mention there's a situation going on right now in the city, housing preservation and development. This is kind of hard to see, but hopefully you get the idea. Housing preservation and development in January announced that they were having 2 small homes programs start up. So, in this administration, de Blasio's like going for the small lots, wants to put affordable housing everywhere, right? He has this big affordable housing goal to meet in the next 10 years. So HPD released these 2 programs, and where they selected 181 lots that developers could apply for in a request for qualifications. And they have over 950 lots in their jurisdiction. They picked 181, and on those there's 17 gardens. So this has been a huge point of frustration for a lot of people. One, because 596 Acres was the organization that actually found out about these programs. We went to some meetings with HPD. We heard about this, and we kind of like sounded the alarm before anyone knew about it. And it's interesting because there's been absolutely zero transparency with this program. So we don't know how these parcels were picked. Some of them aren't necessarily, all small lots are difficult to build on when they're small. to make it efficient for developers, but some of them are literally like 14 feet at the back. So it's difficult to understand what the reasoning was behind picking these specific lots. Also, whether or not the city had concern for the fact that there were already gardens in interim use licenses, but gardens on these spaces. For example, there's one community board where there's more vacant lots than gardens, but gardens are the majority in that area that are on this list. So there's that issue, and then also, these sites are supposed to have affordable housing built on them, but really what that means is it's kind of hidden in the details. More specifics, but for example, one of the programs which is for renting is called the New Constructions Program, where developers are required, and they will get the land for free or for like a very, very minimal cost, like probably $1 or something like that. They'll be given the land and they're required to build a third of the units at affordable housing, at the maximum being the area median income, 165% of that. So basically what this means is that they could charge up to $3,200 for a family of 4 in a unit. So that pricing is really difficult for a lot of people who live in the neighborhood, such as where these lots are being targeted, like Harlem and Central Brooklyn, East New York. So there's been a lot of frustration. So we're a part of the basically campaign to help the people who are a part of these gardens advocate for their parcels to be transferred to the Parks Department so that they can be a little bit more permanent and they can remain a green thumb garden. So hopefully that'll happen. There's been a lot of outreach to elected officials. We've had the Brooklyn Borough President and the Manhattan Borough President speak out in support of taking these gardens off the list when there's just so many other places to create this housing that is questionably affordable. Council members have spoken up and lots of letters to the mayor. So I just wanted to fill you in on that because that's something that is going on right now.
Did you say the land was what, for $1? I think I missed.
It will be free or for $1. That's usually like the nominal amount that a parcel is given away for. So the idea is it's really difficult to build on such a small lot, so the city will give the developer the land as an incentive to put housing there. So, and it's, some of these lots you could only technically build maybe 4 units. Like a lot of them are brownstone sizes. So, a third of that is affordable. And so that's frustrating. So yeah, it's interesting though. And this is also trying to steer the conversation away from affordable housing versus gardeners, because a lot of the gardeners would love affordable housing in their neighborhood. It's more about the program and the transparency of it. And this is a great opportunity for people in neighborhoods to actually get together and have a bigger conversation about what's going on, and go and connect with their community board, because this could be an opportunity for gardeners and people who aren't gardeners who care about their neighborhood to realize what's happening. So another thing I just wanted to mention is that we built another map. It's called urbanreviewer.org. So for 2 years, we had a volunteer in the offices of Housing Preservation and Development going through all of their files, all their urban renewal plans ever in existence. And urban renewal, these are places that have been designated as slums or as blighted, and the city said, we're going to go in, we're going to tear it down, we're going to put something better. And a lot of times nothing better ever came, which is why we have all these vacant lots. So it very much relates to our work. So we had, this volunteer go through and collect all this data, make a huge database, took 2 years, and then we made this map. So you can actually, you can like zoom in and you can see an urban renewal area, and you can click on, you can understand the planned uses for it, whether it was residential, planned as open space, which is something that has come up. We've found lots that have been planned as open space, and they're sitting in the jurisdiction of Housing Preservation and Development, but because they're planned as open space, Housing Preservation doesn't make open space. So it's just gonna sit there forever, and it's not gonna be housing, and it's not gonna be open space. So then we've found it, connected neighbors, and been able to get it transferred really more easily to the Parks Department. But it's interesting because nothing would have ever happened with that land. It would have just sat there forever. So that's my understanding, kind of what's behind affordable a parcel is really useful sometimes. Oh yeah, ta-da! 32 spaces once again.